Want to shift things over, one and all. Check in with you, see what's going on this Friday night. It's 8:15, and it's time for us to trip the light fantastic, to go where no man, well, a bunch of other people have gone since the earliest days of storytelling. It's Fiction Friday, and we're going to start things off with a very, very cool one from my friend and the man who line edited my first novella called Bite, F. Paul Wilson. And I think you're going to enjoy this one a great deal. This comes from, I believe it's the 1970s, late 70s or early 80s. And you might have heard about it. It's called Lipid, Leggin from F. Paul Wilson.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right, Outer Limits. So, time to open that door into the fantastic and check out a man who was heavily influenced by the pulps when he was a kid, about a generation before I came along, and then helped influence me and many, many other people. Before we do that, I want to say hi to everybody inside the chats. I get to say hi to the Rumble folks earlier. And Birdhouse, thanks for being thumbs up with the F. Paul Wilson. Can't go wrong, you guys. Absolutely. Kick ass. Thanks, guys. You guys are awesome. Happy Friday, you guys. Happy Friday. All right, let's get to it. It's been super cold around here. F. Paul is down in New Jersey. I'm from Jersey, as Joe Piscopo would say. And I want to show you, this is from his collection called Soft and Others, published by the mighty people at Tor. And I'll show you F. Paul Wilson over at Fantastic Fiction, just to show you, if you go to Fantastic Fiction, you will be able to pick up many, many, many good books by F. Paul Wilson. And there he is, the medical doctor himself. Doctor, give me the news. Here we are. Francis Paul Wilson is an author born in New Jersey, Jersey City, New Jersey. He writes novels and short stories, primarily in the science fiction and horror genres. His debut novel was Healer, 1976. He actually gave me a first edition of that. It's a hardcover. It's great. Wilson is also a part-time practicing family physician. He retired a couple years ago. He made his first sales in 1970 to Analog and continued to write science fiction throughout the 70s. In 1981, he ventured into the horror genre with the international bestseller The Keep. Of course, that was turned into a film that Michael Mann did. It was cut up pretty badly. F. Paul wasn't too satisfied with it and helped define and the field through the rest of the decade. In the 1990s, he became a true genre hopper, moving from science fiction to horror to medical thrillers like The Select, great story, and branching into interactive scripting for Disney Interactive and other multimedia companies. He, along with Matthew J. Costello, created and scripted the FTL newsfeed, which ran daily on the Sci-Fi Channel from 1992 to 1996. He's won the Stoker, he's won the Prometheus, that being, I think he actually got the first Prometheus Award, which is for libertarian fiction. So there's all sorts of great stuff. One of his first big successes was An Enemy of the State. And there's a new revised version that he put out that was originally published by Tor. It was a little bit different than the one he preferred. Then, of course, The Adversary Cycle with The Keep, the novel that inspired the movie. Now, The Adversary Cycle also brings in Repairman Jack, and Repairman Jack is tied to, of course, his own series that started with The Tomb and went on for many, many stories. Then he did young Repairman Jack novels and all sorts of amazing, amazing stuff. A collection called Quick Fixes of Repairman Jack stories. awesome things. And of course, Repairman Jack isn't a repairman of appliances. He fixes situations for people. So awesome stuff. He and Heather Graham are friends. She sings, he plays drums for their band, and just awesome stuff. So I'm going to read you a story. Some of you in libertarian circles might be familiar with this story called Lipid Leggin. But if you're not, I think this is going to be a treat for you. Let me see. I'm not sure when this was published. Analog, April 1975. All right. Here we go. F. Paul, this is for you. Butter. I can name a man's poison at 50 paces. I take one look at this guy as he walks in and say to myself, butter. He steps carefully, like there's something sticky on the soles of his shoes. Maybe there is, but I figure he moves like that because he's on unfamiliar ground. Never seen his face before, and I know just about everybody around. It's early yet. I just opened the store, and Gabe's the only other guy on the buying side of the counter, only he ain't buying. He's waiting in the corner by the checkerboard, and I'm just about to go join him when the new guy comes in. It's wet out. Not raining, really, just wet, like it only gets up here near the water gap. And he's wearing a slicker. Underneath that, he seems to have a stocky build and is average height. He's got no beard, and his eyes are blue with a watery look. Could be from anywhere until he takes off the hat, and I see his hair. It's dark brown, and he's got it cut in one of those soup bowl styles that are big in the city. Just going to do one thing here, pardon me. A little more light for you here. All right, there you go. Gabe gives me an annoyed look as I step back behind the counter, but I ignore him. His last name is Verratti. Sounds Italian, but he's Hungarian, and he's got plenty of time on his hands. Used to be a PhD in a philosophy department at some university in upstate New York, till they cut the department in half and gave him his walking papers, tenure and all. Now he does part-time labor at one of the mills where they need a little extra help, which ain't near as often as he'd like. About as poor as you can get, that Gabe. The government giraffes take a big chunk of what little he earns and leave him near nothing to live on. So he goes down to the welfare office where the local giraffes give him food stamps and rent vouchers so he can get by on what the first group of giraffes left him. If you can figure that one out, well... Anyway, Gabe's got a lot of time on his hands, like I said, and he hangs out here and plays checkers with me when things are slow. He'd rather play chess, I know, but I can't stand the game. Nothing happens for too long, and I get impatient and try to break the game open with some wild gamble, and I always lose. So we play checkers, or we don't play. The new guy puts his hat on the counter and glances around. He looks uneasy. I know what's coming, but I'm not going to help him out. There's a little dance we've got to do first. I need to buy a few things, he says. His voice has a little tremor in it. And close up, like this, I figure he's in his mid-20s. Well, this is a general store, I reply, getting real busy wiping down the counter. And we've got all sorts of things. What are you interested in? Antiques? Hardware? Food? I'm not looking for the usual stock. The music begins to play. I look at him with my best puzzled expression. Just what is it you're after, friend? Butter and eggs. Nothing unusual about that. Got a whole cabinet full of both behind you there. Now we're on our way to the dance floor. I'm not looking for that. I didn't come all the way out here to buy the same crap I can get in the city. I want the real thing. You want the real thing, eh? I say, meeting his eyes square for the first time. You know damn well real butter and real eggs are illegal. I could go to jail for carrying that kind of stuff. Now we dance. Next to taking his money, this is the part I like best about dealing with a new customer. Usually I can dance the two of us around the subject of what he really wants for upwards of 20 to 30 minutes, if I had a mind to. But this guy was a lot more direct than most and didn't waste any time getting down to the nitty-gritty. Still, he wasn't going to rob me of a little dance. I've got a dozen years of dealing under my belt, and no green kid's going to rob me of that. A dozen years. Doesn't seem that long. It was back then that the giraffes who were running the National Health Insurance Program found out that they were spending way too much money taking care of people with diseases nobody was likely to cure for some time. The stroke and heart patients were the worst, with the presses at the Treasury working overtime and inflation getting wild. It got to the point where they either had to admit they'd made a mistake or do something drastic. Naturally, they got drastic. The president declared a health emergency, and Congress passed something called the National Health Maintenance Act, which said that since certain citizens were behaving irresponsibly by abusing their bodies and thereby giving rise to chronic diseases which resulted in consumption of more than their fair share of medical care at public expense, it was resolved that, in the public interest and for the public good, certain commodities would henceforth and hereafter be either proscribed or strictly rationed, or something like that. Foods high in cholesterol and saturated fats headed the list. Next came tobacco and any alcoholic beverage over 30 proof. The howls that went up from the public. But those were nothing compared to the screams of fear and anguish that arose from the dairy and egg industry, which was facing immediate economic ruin. The Washington giraffes stood firm. They stood firm. It wasn't an election year, and they used phrases like bite the bullet and national interest and public good until we were all ready to barf. Nothing moved them. Things quieted down after a while, as they always do. It helped, of course, that somebody in one of the drug companies had been working on an additive to chicken feed that would take just about all the cholesterol out of a yolk. It worked, and the poultry industry was saved. The new eggs, well, they cost more, of course, and the removal of most of the cholesterol from the yolk also removed most of the taste. But at least the egg farmers had something to sell. Butter was out. Definitely. No compromise. Too much of an adverse effect on serum lipid levels, whatever that means. You use polyunsaturated margarine or you use nothing. Case closed. Well, almost closed. Most good citizen-type Americans hunkered down and learned to live with the lipid laws, as they came to be known. Why, I bet there's scads of 15-year-olds about who've never tasted real butter or a true cholesterol-packed egg yolk. But we're not all good citizens, especially me. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing like 2 fried eggs fried in butter over easy with bacon on the side to start the day off. Every day. And I wasn't about to give that up. I was strictly in the antiques trade then, and I knew just about every farmer in Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, so I found one who was making butter for himself and had him make a little extra for me. Then I found another who was keeping some hens aside and not giving them any of that special feed, and had him hold a few eggs out for me. One day, I had a couple of friends over for breakfast and served them real eggs and toast with butter. They almost strangled me trying to find out where I got the stuff. That's when I decided to add a sideline to my antiques business. I figured New York City to be the best place to start, so I let word get around the antique dealers there that I could supply their customers with more than furniture. The response was wild, and soon I was making more money running butter and eggs than I was running Victorian golden oak. I was a lipid legger. Didn't last, though. I was informed by two very pushy fellows of Mediterranean stock that if I wanted to do any lipid business in Manhattan, I'd either have to buy all my merchandise from their wholesale concern or give them a very healthy chunk of my profits. I decided it would be safer to stick close to home. Less volume, yeah, but less risky. I turned my antique shop up here by the Water Gap. That's the part of North Jersey you can get to without driving by all those refineries and reactors. I turned it into a general store. 12 years now. I heard you had the real thing for sale, the guy says. I shake my head. Now, where would you hear a thing like that? New York. New York? Well, the only connection I have with New York is furnishing some antiques dealers with a few pieces now and then. How'd you hear about me in New York? Sam Gelbstein. I nod. Sam's a good customer, good friend too. He helped spread the word for me when I was legging lipids into the city. How you know Sam? My uncle furnished most of his house with the furniture he bought there. I still act suspicious. It's part of the dance, but I know if Sam sent him, he's all right. One little thing bothers me, though. How come you don't look for your butter and eggs in the city? I hear they're real easy to get there. Yeah, he says, and twists up his mouth. They're also spoiled now and again, and there's no arguing with the types that supply it. No money-back guarantees with those guys. I see his point, and you figure this is closer to the source. He nods. One more question, I say. I don't deal in the stuff, of course. I'm still dancing. But I'm just curious how a young guy like you got a taste for contraband like eggs and butter. Oh, Europe, he says. I went to school in Brussels, and it's all still legal over there. You can't just get used to these damn substitutes. It all fit. So I go into the back and lift up the floor door. I keep a cooler down there, and from it I pull a dozen eggs and a half-kilo slab of butter. His eyes widen as I put them on the counter in front of him. Is this the real thing? He asks. No games? I pull out an English muffin, split it with my thumbs, and drop the halves into the toaster I keep under the counter. I know that once he tastes that butter, I'll have another steady customer. People will eat ersatz eggs and polyunsaturated margarine if they think it's good for them, but they want to know the real things available. Take that away from them, and suddenly you've got them going to great lengths to get what they used to pass up without a second thought. The real thing, I tell him. There's even a little salt added to the butter for flavor. Great, he smiles, then puts both hands into his pockets and pulls out a gun with his right and a shield with his left. James Callahan, Public Health Service Enforcement Division, he says. You're under arrest, Mr. Gurney. He's not smiling anymore. I don't change my expression or say anything. I just stand there and look bored. But inside, I feel like someone's wrapped a length of heavy chain around my guts and hooked it up to a high-speed winch. Looking at the gun, a little snub-nosed .32, I start to grin. What's so funny? He asks, nervous, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's his first bust. A public health guy? With a gun. I'm laughing now. Don't that seem funny to you? His face remains stern. Not in the least. Now step around the counter. After you're cuffed, we're going to take a ride to the Federal Building. I don't budge. I glance over to the corner and see a deserted checkerboard. Gabe's gone. Skittered out as soon as he saw the gun. Mr. Public Health follows my eyes. Where's the red-headed guy? Gone for help, I tell him. He glances around over his shoulder, then back at me. Let's not do anything foolish here. I wasn't crazy enough to come out here alone. But I can tell by the way his eyes bounce all over the room and by the way he licks his lips that, yes, he was crazy enough to come out here alone. I don't say anything, so he fills in the empty space. You've got nothing to worry about, Mr. Gurney, he says. You'll get off with a first offender's suspended sentence and a short probation. I don't tell him that's exactly what worries me. I'm waiting for sound. The click of the toaster as it spits out the English muffin. It comes, and I grab the 2 halves and put them on the counter. What are you doing? He asks, watching me like I'm going to pull a gun on him at any minute. You got to taste it, I tell him. I mean, how you going to be sure? It ain't oleo unless you taste it. Never mind that. He wiggles the 32 at me. You're just stalling. Get around here. But I ignore him. I open a corner of the slab of butter and dig out a hunk with my knife. Then I smear it on 1/2 of the muffin and press the 2 halves together. All the time I'm talking. How come you're out here messing with me? I'm small time. The biggies are in the city. Yeah, he nods slowly. He can't believe I'm buttering a muffin while he holds a gun on me. And they've also bought everyone who's for sale. Can't get a conviction there if you bring the leggers in smeared with butter and eggs in their mouths. So you pick on me? He nods again. Somebody who buys from Gelbstein let slip that he used to connect with a guy from out here who used to do Lipid Leggin in the city. Wasn't hard to track it down. He shrugs, almost apologizing. I need some arrests to my credit, and I have to take him where I can find him. I don't reply just yet. At least I know why he came alone. He didn't want anyone a little higher up to steal credit for the bust. And I also know that Sam Gelbstein didn't pull the yell on me, which is a relief. But I've got more important concerns at the moment. I press my palm down on top of the muffin until the melted butter oozes out the sides and onto the counter. Then I peel the halves apart and push them toward him. Here, eat. He looks at the muffin, all yellow and drippy, then at me, then back at the muffin. The aroma hangs over the counter in an invisible cloud, and I'd be getting hungry myself if I didn't have so much riding on this little move. I'm not worried about going to jail for this. Never was. I know all about the suspended sentences and that. What I am worried about is being marked as a legger, because that means the giraffes will be watching me and snooping into my affairs all the time. And I'm not the kind who takes well to being watched. I've devoted a lot of effort to keeping a low profile and living between the lines, living in the interstices, Gabe calls it. A bust could ruin my whole way of life. So I've got to be right about this guy's poison. He can't take his eyes off the muffins. I can tell by the way he stares that he's a good citizen type whose mother obeyed all the Lipid laws as soon as they were passed and who never thought to break them once he became a big boy. I nudge him. Go ahead. He puts the shield on the counter and his left hand reaches out real careful, like he's afraid the muffins will bite him. Finally, he grabs the nearest one, holds it under his nose, sniffs, then takes a bite. A little butter drips from the right corner of his mouth, but it's the eyes I'm watching. They're not seeing me or anything else in the store. They're 16 years away, and he's 10 years old again, and his mother just fixed him breakfast. His eyes are sort of shiny and wet around the rims as he swallows. Then he shakes himself and looks at me, but he doesn't say a word. I put the butter and eggs in a bag and push it toward him. Here, on the house. Gabe will be back any minute with the troops, so if you leave now, you can avoid any problems. He lowers the gun, but still hesitates. Catch those bad guys in the city, I tell him. But when you need the real thing for yourself, and you need it fresh, ride out here, and I'll see you're taken care of. He shoves the rest of the muffin half into his mouth and chews furiously as he pockets his shield and gun and slaps his hat back on his head. You got a deal, he says around the mouthful, then lifts the bag with his left hand, grabs the other half muffin with his right, and hurries out into the wet. I follow into the door where I see Gabe and a couple of the boys from the mill coming up the road with shotguns cradled in their arms. I wave them off and tell them, thanks anyway. Then I watch the guy drive off. I guess I can't tell a Fed when I see one, but I can name anybody's poison. Anybody's. I glance down at the pile of newspapers I leave on the outside bench. Around the rock that holds it down, I can see where some committee of giraffes has announced that it will recommend the banning of Bugs Bunny cartoons from theaters and the airwaves. The creature, they say, shows a complete disregard for authority and is not fit viewing for children. Well, I've been expecting that and fixed up a few mini cassettes of some of Bugs's finest moments. Don't want the kids around here to grow up without the wabbit. I also hear talk about a coming federal campaign against being overweight. Bad health risk, they say. Rumor has it they're going to outlaw clothes over a certain size. That's just rumor, of course. Still, I'll bet there's an angle in there for me. Ah, the giraffes. For every one of me, there's 100 of them. But I'm worth 1,000 giraffes. Lipid Leggin by F. Paul Wilson. Now, let me read you the intro to this by Paul. I had been playing with libertarian themes in my analog stories, mostly as subtexts. I decided to go all out with Lipid Leggin. It was the mid-'70s, and Senator Ted Kennedy was agitating for national health insurance, the kind that brought Britain to the brink of ruin. Luckily, wiser heads prevailed, and another fascist Kennedy scheme was aborted. But the idea of NHI got me thinking, national health insurance, got me thinking. It also spurred me to write a guest editorial for Analog on the subject in the April 1975 issue. And I wondered about the long-term consequences of such a program. Wouldn't it be logical to assume that if the federal government was going to be paying for the treatment of disease, it would also want to get actively involved through legislation in the prevention of those same diseases? I tried a first draft in the third person, but wasn't happy with it. For the hell of it, I switched to the first person present tense, a voice I usually dislike, but it worked here. George Sithers made a few well-considered suggestions and bought it for Asimov's science fiction magazine. The story still makes sense. I mean, if the government is going to foot all the bills when you get sick, pal, it's your duty as a good citizen to do what's necessary to keep yourself healthy, right? Right? F. Paul Wilson, find this in Soft and Others. Great collection from Paul. That's awesome. I love that. All right, now, I'm going to give you a little bit of my, just going to go with the story that I've got so far called Fuel. I've added some to Fuel, and I'd love to get your feedback about what you think about Paul's story. I like that. Oh, Birdhouse has some comments. We'll put this on the screen where Paul can see them on the replay. Birdhouse, thank you. Let's see, here it is. So here's what Birdhouse had to say. So that was awesome, Guard. I'll never forget F. Paul Wilson from here on out as I butter my toasted English muffin. That's great, Berto says, I can't believe it's butter. Yeah. And don't forget, he has another story called Offshore, which is about a character who has a speedboat, and he's trying to shuttle people to an offshore cruise ship, which is populated by doctors who provide outside the government healthcare systems and healthcare provision, healthcare services. And it's great. It's a great story. Paul's just an amazing writer. And I'm glad that he was able to sell some of his stories early on, that he never had to practice full-time doctoring, so that he could write more stories, because it's really been a blessing and a benefit for so many of us. It's just been great. And, he did well. He practiced 2 or 3 days a week, I think. And then he wrote, and he always wrote 700 pages a day. Wherever he was, he wrote 700 pages a day. And that's something that I love to do myself. So we're going to go with Fuel, the short story that I've been working on. And we're going to go with the latest version, and love to get your thoughts on this. Here we go. Fuel. I've seen things on this journey, things I never imagined, things I never will forget. Here, swimming through the depthless cold of space, I've been blessed. Through life-protecting plexi, densely packed, my cornea have absorbed the most dazzling and most subtle dances of light, the most breathtaking creations of God. Human eyes, likewise, God created, witnessing the once invisible, once unattainable creations in the sky. The jagged, frozen wastes of the belt, the broad clouds of particles murmuring like space starlings in the wake of our advance, the splintered sunlight rising and reaching through spokes of misty, deadly, ice-bouldered rings, refracting, defraying, orange, vermilion, and rose, past Neptune and across Saturn's eye. Oil, gold, laid out in 3 infinite dimensions, the most precious of gifts. And yet I knew from day one that I was not cut out for this place where suits are helmeted and fueled and heated and cooled, guarding against the stark reality that surrounds this tiny can of rivets and rust that would freeze or blow out our veins in seconds. I miss the rain. I miss the natural flow of air. Even a slight breeze, something random and unexpected would do. But here, all is artificial sameness, grounded in steely silence, and in the unnatural silence lurking everlong beyond the shell that our engines propel, between the roids and across the void. I realized this early as I assimilated the first seconds, minutes, and artificial days aboard the ship. But I suppose I suspected as much in the weeks prior, when I was summoning my reserve and I bit that proverbial bullet and decided, for money's sake, to put my feet aboard that radiomonic bullet and make a little dosh to get back on my proverbial feet. Johnson, well, I early could sense that he was a different sort. In the grand family tree of man, his branch and mine had taken altogether divergent paths. One might never know when and never fathom where, but he was quite a different breed. For Johnson, the wanderlust was fuel, and scientific curiosity the mental meal. I couldn't understand, even as we met and hammered out our roles as pilot and co, why he didn't feel his teeth going on edge just thinking about the fact that we were trapped, sealed in a composite of compartments that were surrounded by an ocean of death. If the overworked, underworldly engineers had screwed up, if the calculators had miscalculated by the tiniest fraction of a millimeter as we navigated, if one of the air systems went down or the heat decided to give us the cold shoulder, that was it. Slow, dissipating, crushing, icy death as we became one with the surrounds of space. And if the rockets got too hot, if our radioactive coal furnace threw off more energy than the Chaipov shielding and our special meds could repel or convert, we'd have to spangle our shortened lives with a lot more glitter and buy our carbonized caskets early to well prepare. How other people could not feel these feelings or think these thoughts virtually every moment one accelerated, adjusted, awoke to the phony photons inside the rubber-belted tube, or checked the screens and fuel, I just couldn't understand. But Johnson and I, we were different. And in a way, I suppose that was good, because without his seeming nonchalance, the chalice of our mineral winnings would not have been sufficient for me to last that single strident space job I had decided to take from Pluto to Earth. So you can imagine my surprise and sense of unease upon seeing his furrowed brow and hawk-like stare focusing on the nav as if he were staring into a confounding abyss when I climbed onto the bridge circle. "What's up?" He shook his head, turned to the right of the screen, scanned a second smaller display, gaudily showing a set of scrolling digits that ended in something red, and hovered over it, evidently unaware that his usual avian features now glowed like the face of Mars, bringer of war. Anomaly, I think. Something's pretty damn close to our path, according to the multiplier. He glanced back at the visualizer, then at the digits. About 6 C-clicks. Damn, you kidding me? It wasn't noted by the nav rammers when they plotted the course? Johnson just shook his head. Jeez. After a moment's study and what seemed like a dive into imaginative contemplation, he straightened in his swivel chair and put his hands on either side of the first screen, tilting his head up towards the air ducts. It could be something new. Shrapnel after an asteroid collision that's shot out along a new vector, but whatever it is, it's too close to our path to risk it. Damn, man, a reroute. His sharp eyes fixed on the screen as if it were an insult, and he pulled one side of his thin lips. At least we have time to change course. But you know how it is when even a slight correction becomes part of the path. One decision leads to another, especially this close to the belt. Damn! I sunk my butt into the co-seat beside him and strapped in. I'll set about the changes if you're cool with notifying the chain about this new object, he said. Can do, I replied, with a bit of whimsy swirled into my anger frap. Okay if I add some expletives to their binary delivery? Sometimes our differences weren't so different at all. Be my guest, Shakespeare. I nodded, and he slid his chair along the rail until he reached the nav rack and its lovely little configuration of skullcap, wires, and skin pads that had been installed for easy, hands-free waveform access to the ever-so-boring, pornography-lacking Intel system. While I dictated the message, that silent synapse connector would welcome him with measured words and images only his mind could hear and see. I didn't like that part of the job either. I preferred to input the changes in the old-fashioned way, without opening my skull to ions flowing from the rack. Nothing against our technocratic, technographic computer cohabitants aboard the SS Mission Creep, as we jokingly called our freighter, originally christened the Frisson Reap, back at HQ. But while Johnson seemed to take to swimming in the sea serum of zeros and ones, I found it literally and euphemistically unnerving. There again was that difference between us, and we were different in the way we viewed the serum, too. A funky fluid that they told us to hypo every day in order to stop any overhot jet radiation, giving us a couple extra heads. It didn't give him a moment of worry, but I had to summon a quite limited courage every time I sat in the leather automed chair. So yeah, Johnson didn't worry about injecting, and likewise, I knew he didn't think I'd stream a line of expletives to the home team. I was just expressing an idle fancy, and even if I sent some invective, which I wouldn't do, no one of any significance would hear. The way the corporation had set up the command structure and comms, we sent our little lightspeed dispatches not to headquarters on Earth, but to the relays along the chain. Home base had to trust them to handle the signals from the most distant ships, kind of like manned buoys on a starlit sea, and had to trust their command structure to make the right decisions in case of emergency. The farther any of us were from a buoy, the longer it took to send and receive, meaning that sometimes we'd be on our own to make exigent decisions. It made no sense to rile up the relay boys because they had nothing to do with the original plan. More important, I wasn't sure how hungry Johnson was to sup on the system. The big system, I should say. Being low in the overall corporate cast, nearly lowest of the low, save for some of the lifers on Pluto's Megropolis, who ceaselessly toiled beneath those 6 nuclear satellite suns to supply the gatherer with enough Talmars to pay for a proper memorial when they died, I never entertained any deranged dreams that I'd move up the ziggurat sufficiently to own any property or get corporate stripes. Deep in my not tied to computers mind, I harbored a desire to disappear, perhaps to deal in the budding gray markets for food and metals, maybe even buy one of the scatterers that I'd heard some techies were developing to trick all the algorithmic overlords. I'd never outright asked him, but Johnson wasn't new to the shipping game, and he seemed interested in at least a few more runs. So despite my stark awareness of the fact that this anomaly in our path had been overlooked by the lords, and regardless of my frustration over the fact that a nav change would force us to do a whole series of extra calcs to avoid obstacles on the new route, and despite knowing that we'd have to recalc our deceleration point when we'd be at equilib and 0G, and we'd set the autorotor to flip our standing orientation to use the decel to mimic 1G, and the 9th day midway would become a 10th or 11th day midway. Well, I wasn't going to rock the boat if Johnson thought he'd be able to make what some might call a good career in the corporate world. We were peasants, but we were different enough from one another on enough levels to give me pause before I did something rash that could screw up his plans. He was good at his job, too, reflected by the fact that by the time I completed the dictation and made sure the message was sent, Johnson had completed not only the new first-level adjustments, but the entire reroute, and the ship was subtly changing course, something I could feel in my chest and see through the portals. Like a mercurial lady friend, her mind and actions were diverging from the original plan. So I clicked my mic and headset into the holder and asked him how it looked for the midpoint. And he pointed at the little screen. Says here 3 more days. After our initial reroute, the nav had to compensate to avoid any undetected edge scatter from the orbital zone near Uranus. Do you think another ship stirred up this thing in our path? Tough to tell. I'd have to get access to the whole line's charts, then start doing the reverse vector analysis to see what might have hit this thing or pushed it or pulled it. He briefly moved his hand in a brushing gesture. Not into that right now. He let the silence of outer space fill the inner space. Then he put both hands together and pointed at me with pressed index fingers. I'm hungry. Want to grab some stuff? Sounds good. And that's where the story stands right now, for fuel. Fuel. And I will take your comments and see what you think about how that looks. And again, yes, I have finished Tower. It's just I've been so dominated by everything with the work here. I'm still trying to get it done in little bits and pieces. And then, this post-COVID exhaustion just takes over, and it's rough. Thank you, Birdhouse, putting the link in for former Star Trek writing fellow. Yes, this reading will go out there on that channel, on YouTube and on Rumble, probably tomorrow or Sunday, maybe Sunday night, for your listening pleasure, if you want to. And I have another story that I was going to read from Weird Tales from 1935, actually. But I think I'll do that later. I have a couple stories I want to read. One is by C.L. Moore, and there's another one in here that I want to read by Fitzjames O'Brien. 1935. Let me show you. This is over at the Internet Archive. Like almost all the weird tales from those early days are available now. And you can even, if you want to, you can even listen like the AI reading of them. You can have it read out loud to you, and you can increase the speed and stuff like that if you're driving along. So that's kind of cool. Internet Archive is pretty awesome. There's also an Edgar Allan Poe story that I want to read to you, which is very short, and it's called Silence, a Fable. And it's very interesting, and I won't signal much to you. But if you watch Liminal Spaces on YouTube, the Booktube channel Liminal Spaces, he read it, and then I listened to an audio version of it, which is also, it's available. And it's quite different for Edgar Allan Poe. It still has the Poe edge, but it's so almost like a dreamscape thing that, but at the same time, it's tied to something else that is really, really interesting. So I don't want to spoil it for you. But so maybe next week I'll open up a couple more nights to do some readings, to just, pull away from some of the political things, and maybe do like an hour and a half of the news, and then the last half hour will be some readings, that sort of thing. That might be good. And then I think on February 5th or so, I'm going to be away at the second studio with the links. And by the way, thank you everyone for the kind thoughts about the co-pilot, Flandre. She has been very sorely missed all over the place. It's been really difficult. But, you have faith. God is there. God is there. Remember that. I think the most troubling thing for me, and I'm going to say this, I didn't say this to other people, but I'm going to say it now, just let you know. We were there when they put her to sleep, and they don't close their eyes most of the time. And the vet warned us, she won't close her eyes. They give them an injection so they don't feel pain, sort of numbs them. And we were singing to her. And I was singing, I do the Star Wars theme, but I replace it with Flandre. I go, Flandre, nothing but Flandre, that sort of stuff. And then I also do, instead of Birdie, I do, we love you, Flandre. Oh, yes, we do. We love you, Flandre. So I was singing that to her while they gave her that last injection. And I don't know whether I should include this on the former Star Trek writing fellow thing. I don't want it to be a downer, but it's very strange because we were so close. And you think about all those times that you've worked to try to keep her going, save her from trees, and she's helpless there. And she doesn't understand. And her eyes are looking. They're looking. They want you to help. They're looking, help. I don't understand. And then they're gone. But you have to check that because they're not gone. Remember, the physical cannot create itself. The physical world, by definition, had to have come from something metaphysical. Physics doesn't create itself. And then when you look at the Bible, you realize, oh, I should have read it a lot sooner. Christ, yes. Logos, yes. Intent, design, God, Christ. Salvation. That's all you need to know, I think. I think one of the most, I've been thinking about this, I think one of the most important movies I've ever seen was Mel Gibson's movie about Christ, and I can't wait for the next one. I think it's going to be amazing. So if you can, try to give a little something to the animals around. Give them an extra pet. Sing a song to them. And if you think maybe you don't have the time, while she was sick, I brought a folding chair up. She was lying on the bathroom carpet. So I brought a folding chair up day before yesterday and worked with her. And she was just lying at my feet. And I sang to her sometimes and talked to her while I edited video. So anyway, yeah, crazy stuff. But it's not, it's a weird sadness. It's very strange. It's just hard to get used to it and understand and keep it in mind. But we will read from another era, people long gone who brought us some great things. I am blurry, so I'll leave it like this. And I will also say fare thee well to everyone. Remember, if you want to support what we're doing and support the former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel, a great way to do it is to, donate over at Rumble. While we're here, you can become a monthly subscriber at Rumble, or you can subscribe to the Gardner Goldsmith Substack, and you'll get the news notes every Monday through Friday. And hopefully that'll be a good thing for you, with my thanks, and hopefully we're giving you value back. That's a really important thing. We will have the fundraiser coming up soon from some great people talking about how enthusiastic they are about this. And it's strange because most of you know me because of my political commentary from MRC TV and the nonfiction book that I wrote or whatever, Live Free or Die, and doing this and filling in for David. But my fiction work is actually really voluminous. It's just that very little of it is out there yet because I denied the contract from that company, which would have started all that off. And so it's all waiting to just go. And I can't wait for you to see it. It's going to be really fun. Can't wait. And there's a new renaissance coming for people connecting with other people, supporting good fiction in those digestible chunks where you can really savor stuff. And by the way, next week, I want to read to you from the opening of a novel that I think you'll find really interesting. This one, Ka. This is a very interesting opening. And if any of you read Watership Down by Richard Adams, you might be familiar with the idea of anthropomorphic animals in a way. Great stuff. Or if you read any of the Stuart Little books, or Basil of Baker Street, which is a mouse that was a takeoff of Basil Rathbone. He was like a Sherlock Holmes character. Or, the Redwall novels by Brian Jacques. Yeah, I think he Anglicanized it. I think you'll enjoy it. All right, I better go. I'm going to leave you again with the Outer Limits outro to finish things off tonight. I was going to play the Fall Guy theme in honor of Lee Majors again, but I'll just do that outro. And I want to thank you again. Hopefully we've given you some good stuff, some things to think about regarding federalism and the deeper concept, again, of being an individual who is free and the polis is imposed on you. Again, as an out, I would say, okay, if they could just get closer to the decentralized federalist conception and recognize the rules that are in their constitution, that would be a heck of a lot better. But again, on a moral plane, no one can write a document that says we're going to form this powerful government agency thing, and it's going to apply to you. We're going to have a piece of paper and say that we're creating an entity of coercion and force, and you will abide in future generations. It doesn't work that way. And if you don't run away, that means you give your agreement. No. A little something for the people watching on former Star Trek Writing Fellow from a libertarian voluntarist. So we'll talk to you later. A lot of us in science fiction, right, F. Paul? He's not a voluntarist, but he's a pretty hardcore libertarian. He's a good guy, great guy. What an amazing writer. Have a great night, everyone. God bless. I'll talk to you soon.
Your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.